Well, thank you, everybody. Every time I hear somebody read my bio, I think, I have got to change that thing up. It's just so long. But the key word in there was lobbyist. For those of you who need to disclose anything, I am a lobbyist. I would wear my Scarlet L if I could, but it didn't go with my outfit. But I am proud to be an advocate for transportation infrastructure investment. With the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the message right now is jobs, jobs, jobs. There's a huge banner hanging on the front of our building facing the White House to make sure that everyone knows that that's where we are. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that things aren't getting a whole lot better. This morning, when I checked my email, this is what I awakened to today. And we know that that's not the kind of news that we're looking for in this country. What we're looking for in this country is turning things around. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce feels very strongly that investing wisely and in a targeted way in transportation infrastructure can be one of those things that turns the economy around. We've been talking for years about how transportation infrastructure is the physical platform of the economy. Without it, without a strong infrastructure, we can't compete. Countries all over the world know this. That's why you see them building out their infrastructure. Countries like Zambia know that without transportation, you can't get people to work, you can't get people to hospitals, you can't grow and develop your economy. In spite of the fact that we all know there are tremendous needs in transportation, those arguments seem to fall on deaf ears. So the Chamber decided it was time to change the debate. We said, how do you go about not just talking about how much we need to invest and not just talking about great needs, but how do you talk about how well transportation works and what relationship that has to the economy? Now there's a nuance there. It's kind of hard to explain sometimes, but that's how well it works. Because so often we focus on how much we're spending, but we're not focusing on results. So we decided we would build a tool to talk about how well it works and help us diagnose what we need to do. And we call that the Transportation Performance Index. Somewhere here, there are copies of the Transportation Performance Index, but I don't know where. So just in case you need to find them, uschamber.com, we can get you Transportation Performance Index. How'd we do it? I'm going to give you a little bit of the complicated part of this. We said we need a picture of the country as a whole, but we can't just take an average of states. So we said, well, let's find a sample of geographies and economies and population that gives us a good picture of how the U.S. is. So we took a sample to get the national picture, and you'll see down here that this area is part of our sample. We think this gives us a good picture of what the economy looks like. Then we said what we really need to do is measure what matters. So we went out and we asked our members and we asked communities around the country what matters. I'm really proud of my word cloud, by the way. People talked about systems. They talked about time. They talked about reliability and predictability. They talked about the need for costs to be low versus what they get. But all in all, what they told us generally is that we need to have infrastructure available to us and near us when we need it. We need a quality of service that's safe, reliable, predictable, and fast. And we need to make sure we can handle future growth. We can't just look at today. We have to look at tomorrow. So after we put all of that together, we picked the stocks that went in our index. Now again, if you get a hold of one of these mysterious copies of the index, you'll find the 21 indicators that are across all modes of transportation and look at supply and quality of service and utilization. And then we crunched the numbers. A miraculously really smart woman at the University of Delaware crunched the numbers. And here's what we came up with. Things have kind of gone up and down and up and down and up and down, which is sort of interesting because we've put a whole lot of money in this country in transportation since 1990. And if you smooth out the ups and downs, what you see on our 5-year moving average line is we're in decline. And I think my boss, Tom Donahue, summed it up pretty nicely with this quote. But a lot of people have said to me, well, Janet, we kind of know things are not going so well. Well, why does it matter? Well, here's why it matters. We did the first ever economic analysis to see whether there's a correlation between how well transportation works and what that does to the U.S. economy. And we found that there's a direct correlation between those things. Now, a lot of people say, well, you can do anything with statistics, Janet. Well, I'll tell you that we hired a very smart economist who used to work for the Milken Institute and now works as on her own. And she said, look, I'll do your analysis for you, but nobody's ever done this before, and I can't promise you that it's going to turn out the way you guys want it. You know, associations don't pay for studies, just willy-nilly and say, well, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. We're looking for a pretty particular result because we want a stronger argument. But it turns out that there is a relationship. And why does this matter? How does it matter? We did some projections. We said, all right, what if we made investments in this country that actually moved the needle on our indicators, that dealt with supply, quality of investment, and utilization? You made those substantial investments. And we found that things get a little bit better. And at 0.3% of GDP, if you can move that needle up from 51.24 to 58.92, you find we could actually add $336 billion to the economy, in addition to the value of economic growth that comes from actually doing the work. But if we don't, and this is the direction, by the way, we're going, with extension after extension, not just on surface transportation, but aviation and water resources, we're going to drag down our economy even further. I say even further because if you looked at the United States as a state, and because we used a sample, not an average of states, you can actually do this, you will see that the difference between how we are doing as a nation, that red line down near the bottom, and the average of the top 5 states in the country is worth $1 trillion. We are leaving $1 trillion on the table as a country because we are not making the right investments or enough investment in our transportation infrastructure. Now, if that isn't an argument that we can get Congress and an administration on a bipartisan basis to embrace, I don't know what is, and I will go work on another intractable issue like saving Social Security. Well, what's the prescription? Because we've all heard the diagnosis again and again, although I will put to you that you've never heard it this way. And by the way, moving the needle in California is also key to getting the rest of the country going. And I commend in particular Marnie and Mobility 21 and all of you for the work. I have never been to a gathering of this size of people dedicated to transportation in 15 years of working at this, and you should really applaud yourself for that. So what do we do to turn it around? Well, what we've found is we've really got to target where the problems are, and a lot of those problems are things that you've been talking about here, but the key is we have to target dollars to where the problems are. That's made even more important by the overall situation we are in this country when it comes to debt and deficits. And a bipartisan commission has said that dealing with that debt and those deficits are the key priority for this country. And we've heard it throughout the election season, we've heard it from the president and across the board. And it is not going to be easy to wedge transportation in among these issues, because there's a lot of noise in the conversation today, and you don't hear transportation nearly often enough. How do we get ourselves heard? Well, we've got to stop dealing just when there's a crisis and work on getting some sustained action. We also have to really think about what our needs are and our priorities, not our wants, not our whims, not our fads. We've got to not just spend money, we have to invest it for results. We have to invest it in projects and programs that are going to drive economic growth and jobs in the long run. We also, and this is for you all who are in the room on the design, build, operate, maintain, finance side of transportation. For years, you have been the powerhouse behind moving legislation in Washington, and you cannot give up on that. But until the demand side of transportation puts as much time and effort coming to the table to advocate on transportation, so that we change the people in the room, so we broaden the coalition, we're going to have a really hard time getting this job done. Which is why I told the panel, the audience of the panel I was on before this, that we've really, really got to get out beyond all of us who are true believers, who are passionate about transportation infrastructure, and tell our family and our friends and our churches and our neighbors that they too have to get on the ball and they have to take the time to speak out. You know what moves things in Washington? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce did an op-ed on tax reform. You know how many op-eds there are on tax reform? I mean, please, there are tons of them. Within 2 weeks of an op-ed we did in August when everybody's on vacation, they turned around 68,000 letters to Congress on tax reform. Simultaneously, I did a call for transportation. I said, tell Congress they have got to act on the nation's transportation infrastructure needs, and I got 800 letters. 800 letters doesn't compete with 68,000. The volume of letters that were sent to Congress on health care reform is too many to count. If we expect to compete with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, deficits, debts, war funding, we have got to do more. Even though you feel like you're doing it all, we have got to do more to tell Congress that this has to be a priority. The last piece I'm going to say here is that we have to go from being everything to everybody to really focusing on our priorities. For years, we have been spreading federal money around like peanut butter. And that's great because everybody gets their little bit of it. And that's what moves bills in Congress. But we've been spreading around money, and if you go back to what I said about what we've been doing in terms of performance, we're just muddling along, and the rest of the world is driving ahead. So it is critical that we focus our dollars and we make sure we're investing in projects that are going to drive economic growth. For our part at the Chamber, we are with you. We are with you 100% of the way, and I wouldn't be working there if we weren't completely dedicated to maintaining, modernizing, and expanding the nation's transportation infrastructure. We are so pleased to be able to partner with Mobility 21, and we hope that the work that we're doing to make the argument that a strong performing transportation system is going to drive economic growth will give you some tools to make the difference. So thank you very much for having me here today, and Marnie, congratulations on a great conference.